to another episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. Great to see you today on a nice summer day, and I'm excited for you to introduce our guest today.
Yes, I'm absolutely personally excited to welcome to the show Analyst Relations expert and evangelist Robin Schaffer. Robin, welcome.
Well, thank you. That's quite an intro. I have to live up to that. All right.
Yes, you are the expert. I'm a fan. I follow your content. I think you are a much needed voice, a more than much needed voice in this industry. And I am excited to pick your brain and learn from you today about the analyst relations world. I think there is such a massive amount of confusion. I think there's a lot of immaturity in the way firms utilize and underutilize analysts. And I've seen some even the most mature firms fail to really capitalize on the strategic value of working with us as a channel. So I'm excited to bring you on the show and have your insights here, and both for not just vendors, but also for the buy side. And Julie's going to help us give us some perspective on that as well. So Thank you so much. So maybe tell us a little bit about your work, your background, and what your company and your organization does.
Yeah, I'll try to do it real quickly. So I have worked my entire career in B2B tech marketing, worked for several very large vendors, and did just about everything you can do under the umbrella of B2B tech marketing, and all the way from executing programs to strategic messaging. And then about 15 years ago, I was asked for the vendor I worked for at that point to take on analyst relations, which I knew nothing about, but quickly realized the breadth and the excitement that was in that role, and gave up everything else and just started focusing on that, and worked for a few different vendors for a bunch of years. And then in 2020, I decided that in the midst of a pandemic, it would be a great idea to start a business. So I launched on my own and just started providing analyst relations services to small vendors, startups, all the way to multinationals, and love it. I have never looked back, and I have 3 folks on the team now. So we're just cooking. Really,
I love it. I love it. Congratulations. It's much needed. And I really appreciate your content. I'm going to be sure to share all of your links, your blog, your website. I know you've got a YouTube channel and a book coming, right? You mentioned that before the show. Maybe you could tell us about your book.
Yeah. I wrote a book back in 2020 called Analysts on Analyst Relations. And the idea was there are a couple of books out there written by AR people about how to do AR. But I thought, why not just ask the analysts? Yeah. And I organized a whole bunch of topics for which the analysts could give us their opinion. So I organized that. I wrote the structure around it, put my own content in as context. And it becomes a really nice read, because you're not hearing from you're not hearing from me. I mean, some of it is, but you're hearing from what different analysts say about different areas of your AR program. And I think people can take away a lot of great ideas about what they can do to even make their programs better.
Beautiful. I love it. I can't wait to see it. I'm going to, you can sign me up as a first buyer. So
okay.
Put me down. Okay. So look, we as you know, or may not know, Robin, we always cover a little bit of industry news, what's going on in the marketplace. And we've got a few pieces here, Julie, I thought we could cover off on today.
Absolutely.
First and foremost, our good friends over at Ramco, longtime client and friend of mine, and I know you know them well. There's a new CEO to Ramco Systems, Sundar Subramaniam. Congratulations. He's joined the technology firm with 30 years of history in the business, and coming from firms like Infosys, Cognizant, IBM, and PwC. So very, very, very fitting background for that. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do in their next level of growth here. So congratulations to Ramco, and congratulations to Sundar. Mm-hmm. All right. AI is in the news, as you can imagine. One of my favorite firms and solutions, I think, is just incredibly powerful for the small market buyer. HCM provider iSolved really punched up their AI and benchmarking capabilities here in the last few weeks. They've released a benchmarking solution that is going to allow their users or their employers to be able to benchmark things like salary, tenure, turnover, predictive, and with predictive modeling capabilities to really give them insights at scale, right? Give small businesses big data capabilities for benchmarking their HR performance against the community of ISO users, the anonymized data of that. And so obviously something that's becoming very prevalent across HCM. And I think even more solutions are looking how to do this, right? They're sitting on massive pools of data. And how do you actionabilize that and make it available to your customers for their own businesses? So I love seeing that. It's a really nice addition to that platform. They've also released a lot of AI plans and new pieces and parts to their solution. Right, they're talking about more conversational virtual assistant capabilities. So think Alexa or Siri through a natural language processing chatbot can get answers to questions, which then gives a 24/7, 365 support, right, for various different practitioner or user needs. They're also bringing in a zero payroll error solution that is going to make sure that the anomaly detection and the AI are working together to find those and eliminate them at the source. And then, of course, just more personalization, more augmentation, particularly around recruiting is one area they've mentioned that they're focused on. And then, of course, analytics everywhere, right? Just infusing their data throughout the platform so that you have that sort of, in the moment, right? In the course of work, access to these insights. And so I love it, right? This is the agility enabling, personalization enabling capabilities that you're going to see more and more of, not just in HCM, but pretty much any product that is modern today in the workplace is really going to have this theme, right, of personalization, augmentation, and surfacing those insights for nudges, right, to make good decisions. Any thoughts on there, Julie? Anything I know we've had some conversations around analytics and AI in our last episodes, but any thoughts here?
No, only when it comes to benchmarking embedded in products, I guess I think sometimes you need to think about the fact that often you have to give data to get data, right? And early up front in a relationship that's being contracted with your legal, there's always the tendency for folks for legal part of the organization to pull out the idea of using any data, even in anonymous fashion. And just know up front that if you've let that happen or that's happened, that may hinder your ability to tap into some of the benchmarking that a product might naturally offer you. So you have to think about that earlier than you would normally have to think about that.
Yes. Good point. Very good point. So, sorry, go ahead. Anything else?
Well, let's get to the next one. Next one. Safeguard Global, again, good friends of ours, right? I had the opportunity to sit down with Bjorn Reynolds, the founder, this last Friday. He and I sat down and we dug into the launch of Chat SG, which is, as you can imagine, powered by OpenAI's Chat GPT. I think we're at iteration 4 now, 4 or 4.5. I think it's 4 for Chat GPT right now. And that architecture is leveraging, obviously, a deep learning capability, a generative AI capability, and an NLP capability to really give a conversational interface for users to go in and get answers to questions across things like compliance and workforce, going into another country, let's say, right? So, for example, I took it and I played around with it, right? And I said, hey, tell me what does it take to hire someone in Greece? Like, what kind of employment contract do I need? Can I pay them, any sort of way, or is there certain rules around that, right? So I was able to go and ask several questions to help me understand what it would be like to employ someone there, right? Get answers to my compliance and workforce questions. And I think what's interesting about this is that, when I was talking to Bjorn, he sees this as just the beginning of what could be possible, right? For a potential conversational interface to the world, the ability for someone to really sit down and not only maybe do some research and get some answers about going into or operating or working in another country, but or supporting a workforce there, but also maybe taking action against that, right? Maybe going and looking for a best fit candidate and then maybe setting up an interview and creating the experience for onboarding. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Today, this is sitting on top of, this isn't just scraping Google and going out and finding basic answers. It's actually sitting on top of Safeguard's knowledge base and knowledge zone that gives their customers, that powers all of their products. And it's really pulling across that and giving them the ability to get these answers very quickly. You can play around with it yourself. It's free to engage. And I've actually written an article about my experience with this, Julie. And
and their roadmap plans here. So I'll be putting that out very soon, likely next week. And I've even embedded a screen video of what my experience was talking to ChatSG and getting answers on my favorite country of Greece as a use case for answering questions around, what's it like if I want to hire someone and how would it work? And so, I think this is what you're going to see more of, right? It's a step towards that. What I think is going to be a zero UI in the future, where we're talking more to our applications and getting responses and answers in real time versus maybe logging into a platform and putting information in and waiting for something to come back. So, really exciting. I think you're seeing a lot more ChatGPT across the marketplace, and it's good to see it come into the EOR world.
Yeah, I think it'll just be interesting. These first movers, when we see this stuff, it's so exciting. It's so fun to share. I'm glad that you called out the fact that it's available widely. So, It's not just a for customer thing. You can go in there and tamper with it and do exactly what you did and play around.
Yeah.
What is inevitable as, the market races to ChatGPT is just, many similar tools, just like having tons of blog content, right? Or tons of article content available. And you have to figure out what is the quality of one versus the other. We're a fair stitch away from that, but just anticipating that's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a blessing for compliance, right? The ability to punch in, put in a whole bunch of data, right? I mean, these rules are coming fast and furious. They're complicated. They're building off of other regulations that were already there. I mean, the ability to go in and have something like a technology that can sift through all of that and give you the information that you need specifically, I think is really critical and in real time, right? Especially for the employee. Right? You think about like trying to get answers within policy, within procedure, within law. That's part of the employee experience too, right? And I think that this is an opportunity to help employees get that speed and productivity, right? Productivity is front of mind right now for everyone, and these augmentative capabilities, I think, are going to help practitioner and employee get in, get out, get the information they need, and do it have much more effective outcomes. So. I love it. It's just the beginning, and I'm sure we're going to see more. I know it for sure. Okay, so I think it's a great segue. Robin, one of the things that caught my eye recently was an article that you wrote about artificial intelligence in the analyst relations world, and I wanted to start here and maybe go from there to talk about analyst relations and the state of it today and how firms ought to really be looking at it. But how about from your perspective, where AI is starting to impact your role and the marketing role as well?
Yeah, I don't know that the article was intentionally forward looking. Like I didn't want to get up on ChatGPT and the current tools that people are associated with AI, but think about it in a broader level. And I don't think anybody's really doing that. For example. Instead of pulling down and reading a bunch of reports, can I ask the internet a question? Really ask the world a question that I'm looking for some stats or some trends, and be able to pull that together for me with all of the references, as opposed to trying to pull that out from reading individual reports. That's the kind of thing that I think is going to really elevate what AR can do, because now it's more of a, I don't want to say administrative, but it's more of a tactical role. But now you can get really strategic about not only, managing the relationships, but really managing the content that comes from analysts and being able to more easily share that within your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably even do some analysis against it, right? There's a lot of opinions across firms, right? And that way, you're able to bring all that together and maybe get some context that you weren't thinking of or didn't see. So yeah, I love it. I think there's so many cool ways in which AI is going to make our lives much easier, much better. Certainly going to be some disruption, but I love it. And I think about, when I think about generative AI in marketing, right? I'm excited about the ability for it to actually create things in the future, right? Presentations and, just you name it, right? How many late hours at night did vendors, and Julie, I know you've been there, right? Where you're pitching a solution or something, and you've got these crunches at night of trying to get these ready and out the door. So it's going to be very blessing that way. So,
I discovered
go ahead, Robin.
with ChatGPT that I might have been the last person in the world to understand it. So I apologize if you know this, but you can ask ChatGPT to critique a piece of work that you've created.
Oh, nice. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Oh, good. So I'm not
very
the last
good.
one on
All
earth.
right.
Now you are.
I didn't know that.
So I do some creative writing, which you think is very subjective. It's not factual. And I put in, for example, I put in a piece and it gave me a damn good critique of it, of what the strengths were, what the weaknesses were, what it liked. Really scary, smart.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think I've seen some of the writing that's come out of it, and I like to call it soulless. Right? There's a lot of facts, but not a lot of like soul to it. Not a lot of opinion. But that's not what. That's one way I hadn't actually considered. And I'll be honest, I have ChatGPT on my desktop. I don't use it that often, to be honest. I normally use it as a second opinion for things. Mm-hmm. I'll be candid. I've played around with it in titling. I don't like titling stuff sometimes, although I feel like I'm actually kind of good at it. So I've used it as, hey, here's the titles I'm thinking of. Give me some ideas, and it'll kick back some variations, which have been helpful. But I hadn't used it in that way. So that's a very interesting way to use it, use case to use it for. But I could see that being very helpful.
It was pretty impressive. Yeah. It was quite impressive.
Yeah. Well, good.
I have no idea how it does that. I mean, I understand large language models, but I don't understand how it does that. So that's a good, maybe that's for another episode. You're right. Yeah. But it's fascinating. But these are the things that we need, right? The augmentation that we're talking about, right? And think about that in the context of HR. I mean, HR is already getting whipped pretty hard for not being strategic enough. I mean, I think this is the opportunity, right? Generative has the chance to relieve that minutia that payroll and HR are dealing with, to where they can return focus to more value-added work. And I'm hoping that this is going to be that blessing for them. I think that's happening in all roles. And I, in the new edition of my book, which is coming out in September.
Yes.
I added a chapter on how AI is affecting the analyst role. So I did a bunch of interviews with analysts. Like, what do you see your role as an analyst, how you see it being affected? And there was a lot of, the same points, but people had very, very interesting perspectives. A center thing is exactly what you're saying, because it's true for HR people. It's true for analysts. It's true for everybody. Taking away the mundane, the time consuming work, and having it augmented leaves you to add more value to what you're doing.
Yes.
That's the core principle.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and look, what do analysts do, right? We sift through a lot of data and we try to find the things that people don't see, right? The trends people don't see. And I think that's where the AI is going to be very helpful. Yes. And creating PowerPoints and helping us create reports is going to be great. But I think there's still going to be a need for that critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and that creativity that I think in some ways these solutions don't really offer right now. There's just a lack of soul for it. So yeah, but look, along this conversation around the analyst role, that is one thing I was just so excited to have you on for, right? I feel like just being an analyst, there's so much confusion. I think, first of all, I think we have horrible titles. But the confusion for what we do and what we actually provide organizations, both buy side and vendor, it's confusing, I think, to some. And do you see that as well, Robin? Do you think?
My God, yeah. So first of all, before I even answer it, I want to ask you why you think the title is so misleading.
I think part of it is that it sounds incredibly junior. And in reality, most analysts are incredibly senior.
Yeah.
And I'm not a person who I feel like I need a title in any way, but I don't think analyst really dictates the executive level experience and insights and strategic value that we bring to the table.
I've never really thought about it that way, but that is a fabulous point.
Yeah, it just does not, and I don't care that you can call me whatever you want to call me, but I think there's sometimes when I say I'm an analyst, I think some people look at me and think like, well, geez, haven't you been in your career a little while? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing, right? Because analyst in a Big Four consulting firm is a junior first time consultant, right? So it's just a little bit of a weird thing there. But even if you go beyond that, I think if you went to vendors and you asked, I mean, I even look at my clients sometimes and they didn't know I did,
Hi, we're Meg and Amy from The Meg and Amy Show. We're not only tech execs and big picture thinkers, we're also best friends.
We're curious learners. And on this podcast, we're challenging the status quo and activating the future.
And we're going to give advice about work and leadership, right, Meg?
You know, we can't help ourselves. But this podcast is about exploring possibility, not being right.
That sounds refreshing.
For more, tune in to The Meg and Amy Show.
A big part of what I do is go-to-market strategy work, right? Helping C-suites understand how to do better in going to market with their products. And I don't know that title or the idea of what we've done, in the past, being very report-driven and producing market analysis, that really demonstrates to them, I think, the value we really bring to the table. And that's something I'm hoping we can clear up a little bit on this show.
Yeah, I think that's right on. And I would have to say almost 100% of the companies I've worked with or clients I've worked with, the executives see the analyst relationship as one way. The analyst is going to help me sell, promote, get my brand out there and push me in the market. And I have to get on the reports and I have to get those relationships going so I can be in the top right and all that good stuff. And that's leaving most of the value on the table, because if you consider the inbound, the advice, the feedback, the recommendation side of what analysts do, because of from their perch as being experts on an industry, as knowing what the competitors are doing and knowing what the customers want, knowing what the trends are, and having that high level view, they can add so much value to your internal workings of your organization, whether it be your product roadmap, whether it's your partnering plan, whether it's your messaging or go-to-market plan, or, literally any part of your business can be speeded by talking and getting input from an industry analyst. They give excellent feedback and support. And if you take their ideas, and if you manage those to the extent that you take ideas, you vet them, you determine what is truly actionable, you take action on it, and then in the best case scenario, you actually measure the value of that action you took, of the value of putting that feature on your roadmap or going after a different market or, building a new partnership or something.
Yeah.
That it's going to like so outweigh the value you get by being on a report, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That relationship is key. I know that, I always say this, and I'm sure it sounds like a sales pitch, but I always say to my vendors that I work with, like, look, the vendors I work with for the longest time get the most results out of it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to work together in these little short sprints. It's fine if you're doing a white paper together or you're doing something, but to really move the needle and to work together over a period of time, I think that's where a lot of impact comes into play. And I've had vendors that I've worked with consecutively for a long time, and others I've kind of worked with off and on. And I find that we get a lot of value out of working together over a period, because I can make those suggestions and recommendations and help them implement them, and also ultimately help them pivot if needed in various different ways as and when it comes up. But I find the value that comes out of our engagements tend to be really rich when we've worked together for a long time, because we also get to know each other much better. I find as well. But do you find I think there's a lot of vendors who don't see, and I think they should, and I'm just curious your opinion about seeing analysts as a channel, right? You talked about engaging buyers, and that's certainly what every vendor wants, but I think we're a very important channel in the go-to-market ecosystem. And part of that is our knowledge, but also certainly our brands. But what's your viewpoint on that? And what would you say to vendors who maybe miss out on that, don't engage that channel?
Yeah. So when you say a channel, do you mean like you think of a traditional marketing channel or go-to-market?
Yeah, I mean, just in the same way vendors have partners, right? They have consulting firms maybe they work with, or just an ecosystem of folks outside of their own organization that they work with. I call it a channel, but maybe it's not the right word. But you know what I mean? I kind of feel like it's an important aspect of product and important aspect of marketing. And just curious what your thoughts are on that as analysts, as a channel.
Yeah. So I think analysts as a channel is the thing that people, jump to first, in my view. And when I say a channel, meaning a way to, like I said before, a way to get their messages out, a way to reach buyers. And they, and you can't ignore that, because analysts are extremely influential in one way or the other on what's happening in the market and what those buyers are going through, that buyer's journey. They have a lot of impact. It's been proven many, many times that analysts are among the top influencers of business deals. So they are a very important channel to get your messages out there, and not only getting the messages out there, but helping you craft what those messages should be and will be effective.
Yes. Yeah. Resonating, right? Resonating.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So
hey, Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's really striking me, and I've been clear about, but I'm not sure that, across the entire industry, it's very clear, is just the importance of the providers as being kind of the primary stakeholder and client for the analysts, right? Because when you work with the practitioners, they're very familiar with the results that are being produced and become socialized, in whatever forms those research areas are. But I think that a lot of practitioners and even client side buyers don't understand, really how the sausage is made. Mm-hmm. and how it is that you garner those in-depth insights and then package them and really vet them. And so what they end up seeing or getting attached to is kind of an end chart or, peak or valley or square or whatever, right? Whatever sort of thing they think about as presenting or summarizing that information, or get familiar with reports, but they don't really understand the critical role that analysts play vis-a-vis the provider developing you're market makers, right? In many cases, because you're helping develop the offering and think about, exactly how it's used best in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you, Jennifer.
Robin, when you think about, maybe this is actually for both of you. I'm going to ask you both this. Maybe Julie, you can kind of take the buy side sort of viewpoint here, but like, the modern marketplace has changed, right? The way we're buying is different. I mean, geez, I heard, there's a number of vendors who are now like even going into like Snapchat and TikTok and some other areas that are just, new, right? It's just totally different than what we've seen in the past. Certainly COVID and the pandemic I saw a lot of DIY sort of buying coming around, particularly down market when it came to HR products during that time. Yep. But like, the modern marketplace, like where do you think the role of analysts has come, evolved to at this point? And I'd love to just sort of hear your point of view, Robin, maybe from the vendor perspective, and then Julie, maybe from the buy side. Like, do you think it's changed a lot, or is it really still very, very much the same?
We talk about that a lot within the AR community, how things have changed with analysts and their influence on buyers. I think, but you were talking about an influence on vendors is what in the way they work with vendors, right? So,
yeah, just in general, I'm just wondering in the marketplace today, the where analysts sort of fit in, has that really changed in terms of what it was in the past, right? I mean, are you seeing that still, and how they're viewed, right? I mean, even how buyer and vendor view and leverage the analysts, has that evolved much since the last several years?
I think so. So I think if you go back, there wasn't access to information. So people were completely dependent on analysts to help them, make decisions, right? Because information was not readily available.
Yeah.
Now you see information being more readily available, but people still going to analysts because, and then I see with AI and the future, there's going to be even more information. And I think that means people go more to analysts because the more information there is, the more you just want the darn answer. We don't want to pour through this volumes of information and try to make sense of what fits for your situation. You need an expert to help sort through all that, to help you find the match to what you're dealing with. And I see analysts as important and valuable as always to those buyers. And I think they're going to become even more valuable into the future.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's and I want to talk a little bit next about sort of engaging, but I think there's a maturity level that says, hey, we don't know everything, and the analysts, not that we know everything, but we
but we know a lot about what's going on in the marketplace, right? We've got a very good perspective. And I think that more firms need to tap into that.
Yep.
And I think that the maturity around that says a lot when an organization can open the kimono, show the warts and say, give us your honest feedback, help us, guide us on this messaging, guide us on what we're thinking. Are we off base? Are we on base? Are we disrupting, or do we just think we are and we're not, right? And I think that takes maturity, right? And being able to say, look, we don't have all the answers and we need to come and regularly have a dialogue with the marketplace experts that do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But Julie, what about your viewpoint of the buyers? Do buyers look at analysts any differently now than they did in the past? Are they using them differently, you think, or?
Well, I think they're misunderstood, right? And oftentimes the value is kind of boils down to things that the analyst produces that become socialized to answer key questions or spot information, like who's playing in the space, right? Or what clients do they have, or what's the roadmap, or what's next, right? Those are snippets of information that are part of the overall context and picture that you're really diving very deeply in to understand and to differentiate across the provider community. And the more that HR organizations in particular undergo large transformations as opposed to, like a small niche market buy, I think the harder it is for the analyst community to really get the context within which the client is asking these questions. And it might be one of the things that, that the advisor community gets a lot of context, but we're not in the deep and detailed depths of the provider community who's telling you what's new, right? So they've always been very totally different spaces. And I just don't think it's widely understood exactly how you get those snippets or what you do to have that insight that when they just come to you kind of for those top of mind spot items often out of context, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do you think about quadrants, Robin? I'm not a fan personally. I don't think there's anything magical about any of them. And I don't think that I hated making them. And I also think that that's not the way buyers really ought to buy. They ought to buy use case wise, right? Like look at the use cases that they're focused on solving, where that product's heading. Can it solve it? Can it help you where you're going in the future versus, who's got the most stuff?
Yep.
The same normal three that always win. But what are your thoughts on that? Are people tired of those? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I don't think that people are tired of them. I think people, it's kind of what I related to what I mentioned before. People want a nice, simple chart to net it all out and show them where everybody's positioned. People like that kind of simplicity. And I think there'll always be a place for that in the market.
Yeah.
However, if you talk to any good analyst, they'll say, this is just a slice. This doesn't tell you, you need to talk to us to understand what you're going through, what challenges you're facing, what use cases you have. If we're going to make have a meaningful discussion about how to solve those with a vendor, with a provider. So there's always a good debate I was having yesterday about if you're a small player and you're just starting to embark on being evaluated by an analyst, you're just getting big enough and there is a report that you're considering trying to get into, and you're probably going to be a niche, or a low, I don't know, whatever they call them, and in the not good position, when someone's looking at the whole thing, you're not in there. And people will say, yeah, but you're part of the conversation.
Yeah.
You need to get part of the conversation. You need to get to the table. If you're on those charts, you get the visibility to be considered. Even if you're not, so it's a debate. I think it depends a lot where your competitors are and who you see competing and how you stack up against them in the report. I think, I'm curious your thoughts. I think there's just a place for that. And I think the market likes those things.
Oh, I have to say, Pete, because, we all know that, especially the major flavors of, these different visuals and there's actually, it's anybody who knows and is familiar with a variety of them could pick up any one of a square or a chart or whatever the visual is and say, now tell me why these guys, why they're even part of the picture. And these guys, why are they even here? Right.
Yep.
And it will vary from, one analyst firm to another. And, and then those who have been in the space, and especially you guys in the AR space, understand, well, like there were certain thresholds. So that's why, in this particular view, these folks wouldn't even appear, even though they're very much part of the conversation. And that alone is so frustrating on the buy side to me. It is a necessary evil. I totally agree with Robin. I don't think it's going away anytime soon because people want to see that, but it just curls my blood when, I watch buyers who say, well, I'm just going to go pick up the latest graph. And those are the folks that, I need to invite to an RFP or, that is their qualifier. And it's usually without the interaction with an analyst or even an advisor. And that is the part that is super frustrating, but it's also why the providers play so hard to get on that visual, right?
I wasn't commenting on the quality of them, by the way, or whether they are actually representative. I was just saying that the reality of people is that they want, they want things simple. And whether it's
human nature
is not, or meaningful or not, is not always a consideration.
Are you tired of talent and HR podcasts that sound like corporate training videos? Same. Talentless is the no-fluff show about hiring, leadership, culture, and what's actually going on in the world of work. Talentless is a podcast for recruiters by recruiters. Hosted by Desiree Goldie and Ashley King, they're smart, occasionally salty, and never afraid to say what everyone else is thinking. Listen wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe at talentlesspodcast.com.
The Use Case Podcast is where technology vendors get to talk about themselves. And it's a wonderful place for vendors, investors, and practitioners to listen to the story of the solution, the features, the benefits, the attributes, etc. And we get to know the CEO or founder during the call, and we also get to know the tech. So subscribe to the Use Case Podcast.
Yeah, let me give you a example of this in real life. I think to summarize what you're saying, Robin, is as analysts, I'd say the number one question that we're asked, especially at events, especially at places where we get around a lot of buyers, is what's the best? Fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. And I always tell them there's no answer to that. I can't give you an answer to that. And it's not on a chart. It's what's best for your use cases, what's best for your trajectory, what's best for your needs. It's not about what was ranked number one, because what's ranked number one might not necessarily be number one for your footprint, right? It's got to fit you perfectly. And that I think, and you can see people go, oh, right, you're right. You know what I mean? Like they get that. And I'm not saying don't use the quadrants as a guidepost. I think it's a guidepost, but I think you have to sit down with your unique use cases, your unique requirements, and your unique path forward to where you're trying to go to, right? And say, what is the right things to bring to the table that is going to solve that for us and bring us to where we want. So I hope that people, you're right. It's human nature, right? We want the easiest on-demand answer. It's never going to be, we don't want to do the homework, right? We don't want to do the math.
Well, those things, they move slowly too, right? So what's number one? And you spend all this time, reaching the certain area in the visual that you want to be portrayed at. But it also means that, folks who aren't as new and innovative take a little while to make their way out of those spaces in the chart. So,
yeah. And it's hard.
Things, that are hard to depict in those.
Yeah. And every industry has its, or every market has its whale, right? It's one behemoth that dominates everything. I mean, I feel like that's just sort of what it is, unless it's a new area. And it's going to feel daunting, right? We're not the X billion-dollar company. We're the younger, emerging firm who's disrupting in this way or that way. And how do you get people to consider your platform or your solution over maybe one of the big 300-pound gorillas? So
and I think being on those charts kind of validates that you are real. You're something that you should pay attention to, and that works. Another thing very related to this is the fact that a lot of analysts are organized by technology.
Yes,
everybody has a slice of a technology, and as we know, technologies are more and more specific as you go along, and people cover a technology. However, like you said, use cases would be a better way to organize.
Right.
Or by business problem is another way I say it. So I have this business problem. There may be several types, different types of technologies that don't compete with each other because they're in their little silos. But guess what? To the buyer, they're competing for the way to solve this problem.
Yes,
right?
That's a great point.
And analysts tend to be down and focused on the technology that they support and understand the business problems it solves, but don't always see, well, you can go up another mountain, to get to that peak, completely different mountain to address the same goal. And you don't necessarily see that if you're just technology oriented.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, just kind of pivoting over back to this maturity point, right? I've come across vendors who are incredibly mature for their size and age. And then I've come across some that are shamefully immature for their size and age.
Yep.
But what's your thoughts on that, Robin? What do you say to young firms that are new, wanting to really get a good foundation going, or even those that are kind of late adopters? Like, what would be your advice for, say, getting an analyst program going and kind of, maybe it's a crawl, walk, run thing. What does it look like in your advice for those, either, like I said, early entrants or late adopters?
So at any level, it's about what is new, different, better, differentiated, I would say innovative, but that word is overused, about your solution.
Yeah.
So if I talk to a startup and I ask them, so what's special? What's special about your company? What's special and why should people buy? And they can't give me a compelling answer. We're cheaper, we're faster, we're whatever. They're a me too, right? And the analysts are not going to be necessarily interested in them. So they might have minimal success with working with an analyst relations program because they don't have in their heart and soul a real passion and difference and why they exist and why they should exist and what's valuable about them, right? So that's kind of not exactly your question, but it's like a table stakes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times larger companies can't define that. They define it in terms of kind of status quo features. Well, we're better at this. We're not, or functionality or capabilities or characteristics. And that's not what analysts really drive analysts. I mean, when a space matures, they have to look at those things and compare it, but it doesn't wake them up and get their interest and, pique their interest. So
right.
At a core, whatever size you are, you've got to find that center of what is your purpose, what is your mission, what is your different about the way you do things, and then hammer on that. So I always say that that's a critical first step in doing an analyst relations program at every level.
That's a great point. Yeah, I've actually helped a few firms redefine their differentiators, right? They all come to you and say, well, we differentiate on service. And I'm like, that's fine, but everybody does.
Yep.
What else, right? What else you got, and help them and they don't realize sometimes that they are differentiating in ways that they had no clue. Right. And that I think is where we can help. So, yeah. And what about, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so if, when I talk to startups, if they've really got that idea, even if they're on the napkin stage, even if they have their product launched, they'll have customers and they'll have a Rolodex of customers and revenue. They have a really interesting disruptive idea. The analysts really want to hear about it. And
great first start.
And frequently people think they're too small. They're not developed enough. The analysts aren't going to be interested. Wrong. They are going to be really interested if you've got something really interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
Robin, that just makes me feel like, like you guys should be known as the Shark Tank.
Yeah.
The Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Guys, really.
We're nicer.
We're nicer. Branding. Forget being an analyst. I'm a shark.
Yeah.
I think so.
No, it's a great point.
I think
it's a great point.
If you think you're innovative, you're going to find out real fast when you talk to an analyst and they fall asleep during a briefing, or they're doing email because they've heard it all before. You're going to find out, even if even through a briefing, if you've got something or not, if you're hot in the trail, if they're engaged, if they're asking questions, if they want to talk to you again, you get feedback just from that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even just that perspective of, hey, look, you're way off, or, hey, wow, you really got something here.
Yep.
I mean, that's enough to give you a guidepost to begin saying, hey, we know we can do something with this, right? Or, hey, we got to go back and maybe do a little bit more work. So where do you get started, Robin? Like, how do you pick what firms you go to, what reports you use? Like, I'll tell you, I'm really good. I don't know if everyone does this, but I'm very good about admitting when a firm comes to me and saying, look, I'm not right for you. I'd love to learn about you, but you'd be better off to work with this vendor or that, or this analyst or that analyst. But I don't know so much if that happens everywhere. And the reality of it is I think it's a little overwhelming, right? Like you're new. Where do we start? What do I do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when I get a new client and I need to build that analyst list, right? What firms and analysts are we going to care about and how are they prioritized? So we do, like in my company, we do a lot of research, basically how they define themselves, how they define their coverage areas, what they write about. We look a lot about what are they writing about? What are they covering? What keywords are relevant to your business that they're writing about? Maybe not even a vendor, but they're writing about that topic, employee engagement or some topic. And that really helps you identify the large field of analysts that are in your space. And you might find 100 analysts, that are tangentially involved in what you do. Then the hard part is prioritizing them, because what you need to do always is have a priority of analysts. And I always do most people do the tier 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yeah.
So keep tier 1 to like 7 to 10 analysts per company or business line, right? Because you want to focus on them because they're the ones that are going to give you the most value. And value is judged by what your business objectives are. If you're really out there and you've got to differentiate and get your brand across, that's what's holding you back. It's like, what are your obstacles and how can analysts help you? Then you need to really get the analysts that can help you refine your value proposition, refine your brand, refine your messaging, and help you get that out to the market, right? If you're trying to sell and you just need sales and revenue, and you see that, like you've got your branding and you just need to move fast on selling, it might be different analysts, that are more in the direct advice and recommendation side. So depending on what you need to do in your business, if you're launching a significant new product, you need people that can help you with that, right? So you would prioritize your analysts against what your business goals are. Who's going to help? Who are the ones, the 7 to 10 that are going to help you most, not by some vague definition of value and priority, but that align the most and the best with your business objectives. It's not an easy exercise because there's no crystal ball that tells you how influential or how good an analyst is in a particular space, right? But you can do your best guess. And I always say, tiering is very dynamic. You do your best guess picking 7 analysts to start with. And then you go through them and you realize they're not the ones. And then you go to another group, or you constantly are moving people up and down based on engagement, based on what they're writing, based on your company's priorities changing. So that's just generally how you provide that kind of focus on who you talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is very much, you're right, aligning to those voices that align to the types of things you're working in, right? And certainly those that are going to give you the perspectives that can give you. Is there a number? Is there a set? I mean, do you have? I mean, you can't participate in everything sometimes, right? It's very time consuming. But do you have a benchmark of where you tried to tell firms to participate in these sort of competitive type analysis?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Is there too many,
Well, there are too many, right? So they have to be very judicious because they take an enormous amount of effort for the vendor to participate in those. There's usually a RFI or a survey of, 200 questions, and they have to do a presentation and a demo and get customer references, and it's a big lift, right?
Yeah.
So, frankly, known in the market is the Gartner piece and the Forrester piece and the IDC piece. Those are the biggest 3 firms. And if they're doing reports that you fit into, you sort of have to do that because that's going to be critical to your success to be in those reports and to create relationships with those analysts.
Absolutely.
Beyond that, you have to look at, so if you're not in a report with the top analyst, I had a client recently who there wasn't a report yet for their space that they could fit into, or that they should pursue.
Yes. I've come across this.
Yeah. And then we found a second tier firm, beyond the first three, but beyond the big three, but a pretty good firm that had a report that was dead on in their space. And we said, we have to get into that, even though they're not as big as of a firm, because there's no other reports, they don't exist that this one hits the nail on the head. In terms of what their research is. So we're going to go with them. So that's, part of it, how well the research really how well you're going to do, right? How well it serves your value proposition. And then, the top three are evident. The next level down is a little hard to pick through and define, but certainly if you've never heard of the firm, really question whether you should participate.
Yeah, no. Understood. Yeah, I think it's largely about too that also the analyst brand themselves as well, right? Like I feel like my personal brand is far bigger than my firm I've launched, just given my longevity in the marketplace. But you're absolutely right. I think that all of those things certainly have to come into matter when you're picking this. Now you had something. I was reading one of your blogs where you mentioned something around the concept of making a big splash with little dollars.
Yes.
What's because I deal with a lot of emerging and mature firms, but in some of my emerging firms, they believe they maybe don't have the budgets to do analyst relations, right?
Yep.
What are your thoughts on how to do that the best way to make your most bang for the buck, I guess?
Yeah. So right or wrong, this is the way I think about it. I think that a company should only spend with an analyst firm for a couple of reasons. Mm-hmm. They want feedback, inquiry, the inbound side, because they're not going to give that other than a high level feedback. They're not going to give you that kind of, coaching, advisory, and deep work for free, right? You have to have a commercial relationship to get that.
Right.
And that is really worth, investing in. And then the second thing is for content, right? So if you want a thought leadership paper or a webinar, getting a third-party validation, not to say, hey, this is great company and paint you all rosy, but just to talk about the problems that you solve, right? In a way that interested parties, your target audience is going to be interested in, that's going to be a valuable piece of content. Well, you associate with a firm, a third-party firm, it gives you instant validity versus writing something yourself.
Yes.
So
client case studies as well.
Exactly. When I think of that as really content marketing, I don't think of it purely as analyst relations.
Yes.
So I can get budget from my friends over in content marketing because they are charged with putting pieces out in the marketplace, and I can help them get a third party piece in the marketplace that's going to do really well and help them. But that's like a different mindset, I think, than the core of what analyst relations are, which is that advice, guidance, input, and then that channel to get your messages out in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly how our firm is established, right? We're centered around advisory work, research work, and content work. And each of those interchange and work together to help the vendor in a number of different ways, our vendor clients. And certainly our audience is buy side, right? We're communicating our products to and our content. But I think there's a lot of firms, young firms that think, oh, we're too small for that, right? We can't, we can't afford it, or it's not the right time. And I love that you've kind of cleared up some of that here, because I think the sooner the better, right?
I think with most startup firms, they should hold back on investing, because the misconception in the market is I'm going to invest in one of these big firms and they're going to magically cover me. And somebody said the other day, it's kind of like buying a gym membership and never going to the gym, right? And expecting to get fit. If you're going to invest in a analyst subscription, you're going to really do it because you're going to put the energy into learning and building those relationships and getting that value out of it. And it takes a lot of effort from the vendor to make the value come at, I'm saying the same thing again, up to the vendor to put that energy time into that to get out of it what they can
Yes.
in the analyst
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, but it's never too early, I think, to engage, right? You could certainly brief analysts. Where that's one thing that I always always feel bad when vendors sometimes it's like they'll hold back on briefing because they're not a subscriber, and I'm like, look, it's okay. We can. Yeah. I just want to learn what you're doing, right? And then and these younger firms, they don't know that, and so it doesn't cost you anything. It shouldn't cost you anything to engage an analyst firm.
That's where I was
and brief.
Get to. I kind of interrupted myself. I'm sorry about that. Because I'm always encouraged, the first thing is get on their radar.
Yeah.
Right? And
teach us.
Tell your story. Go tell your story to as many analysts as, are relevant to you. Not as many, but, the top ones that you find relevant. And then from that, you're going to, first of all, that'll take you so far, and you can, only take you so far. And then at some point you say, well, if I want to go further and get more value out of the analysts, I need to invest. So don't do it at first. Yep. Do it after you see a clear ROI. And the other thing is do it once you meet a Pete or a Jennifer who you say, they get it. They can help me. Because in the nature of in the interaction of a briefing, you really get a sense of what that analyst's questions are, what their their high level feedback is, and what they can help you with. So if you meet a lot of analysts, you're going to click with some and you're going to say, I want to work with that guy more. Or that girl more. And then that is where you want to then invest to get more value.
Hi, I'm George LaRocque, and I'm looking forward to exploring the critical trends shaping the future of work and technology with you over on the Work Tech podcast. Now, this podcast is a little different. I bring together industry leaders, innovators, and investors, and we go deep into market intelligence that matters to HR pros and tech providers alike. So give the Work Tech podcast a listen here on the Work Defined Podcast Network, and please subscribe if you like it. See you there.
Yeah. I love it. So look, I want to pivot a little bit here. I want to ask your opinion about, so Julie and I, we're in the HR and payroll world. And one of the conundrums in the payroll world is, where does payroll report? Is it HR or is it finance, right? It's a chicken or the egg. To me, I call it the payroll's chicken or the egg moment. What about analyst relations? I have an opinion about this, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Where should analyst relations be reporting in an organization? And does that change from startup to emerging to then mature at some point? What do you recommend in that way in terms of where that reports?
I don't think it really changes as a firm matures, because I feel really strongly that product marketing is the home for analyst relations. Yeah. And you don't see it there hardly ever. Yeah. You see it under communications, under marketing. Well, sometimes product marketing is often under marketing. But you see it more as just from the outbound channel perspective. And the ones that are going to learn from it are primarily product marketing, are going to take advantage of that inbound side of it. And they're the ones that are going to be doing the briefings and doing the presentations and can take the feedback and make action on it. Yes. So that's where I think it belongs. That's where I think it's most successful, but it's not there very often.
It's interesting you say that. You're absolutely right. And one of the things that I have noticed about the most, where I've had the best experiences as an analyst in terms of getting the information I need, and having good dialogue and good rapport has been better when it is in the product side, right? Yeah. And I'll point to UKG for this. As Workday does this as well. And I don't know if you remember Kathy Nottingham. She was a legendary analyst relations lead. She built the program at Ultimate Software, and she influenced some of the leadership that is now at Workday. But they both align it under their product marketing side versus purely marketing or purely comms. And the flow of information that comes across is much better. It's more succinct. It's clear, and they can go deeper with us. Yeah. The product folks, right? The product owners versus the frontline kind of, or excuse me, the high level sort of ivory tower marketing people who maybe are simply just writing about it, right? And so, I think there's a much better experience, there's a much better flow of information, and a much more clean, less barriers to dialogue between each other about what you're building, and answering our questions as analysts, which we know we all push hard on things that others are not going to ask, right? Yep. So very interesting.
I think it's like self-perception too. If you're part of comms, you're seeing yourself as a comms person. You're seeing yourself as light in content, right? I'm not the expert on the content. These guys over there are the experts. I'm going to just arrange the briefings and, and take notes. And when you're in product marketing, just because that's where you sit, you see your role much more strategically and deeper. And I think you have, because of where you sit, you can address AR differently, better.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And the message comes across very watered down, I think, when it's the further it gets away from the product team, right? And it gets very diluted. And I'll be honest with you, as analysts, we cut right through that very quickly, as you probably know. So you did a great show recently on YouTube, and I'm going to share this. I don't recall if this was your show, Robin, or if this was someone else's, but you talked about the concept of the intersection between AR and PR, right? Yes, that was a great conversation. And the fact that they need to be working in concert, right? They're not the same thing. So could you talk a little bit about that and explain why that's important? Because I think that's where you're right. When comms and PR are managing analyst relations, it is not the same experience as when marketing or product marketing is doing that, at least from my perspective as an analyst. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of PR, how would I say it? PR-ifying AR that happens.
Yes.
And the analysts really don't like it because PR has a very different way of working.
Yes.
They doesn't sit well with analysts it's more transactional, frankly. And analyst relations is more on the relationship and building that relationship over time. And even though, certainly PR has relationships, it's not the same. It's not the same.
Yes.
Now, when PR and AR are siloed, it's really a big wasted opportunity, because you can have, so first of all, AR should be supporting every PR effort with analysts, right? So if you're putting out a press release, there should be an analyst that's briefed, that knows the thing, that can be referenced for PR outreach, that should be quoted in the press release, all that good stuff. That's basic. That's table stakes. And I think most people do that. Actually, I think a lot of people don't do that, but I think that's an easy thing to do. But there's things like PR is great at content, and they can help provide content to AR to feed analysts in a lot of cases if we need some of that content. And analysts can really inform the PR people by them sitting in on a briefing or getting notes and understanding an analyst's perspective of the market and where the opportunities are. And if AR and then AR and PR have to be aligned in the message, what are we saying to the market? And be consistent and have that support each other. So there's a lot of really good things that happen when there's a good, solid partnership between PR and AR.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's some very the messaging when it comes from PR from the PR side tends to be very fluffy and very watered down. And again, you get it straight from product. It's a whole different thing. Yeah, so exactly. So look, just to kind of round this out, Robin, I could keep asking you questions. I promise you'd get tired. But I want to talk about analyst etiquette, engagement etiquette, right? I've got a few pet peeves of mine, right? One of which is having PR people try and, come and pitch these things to us. And it is very watery. And you're like, okay, this isn't telling me anything that I can't read on the internet. The other thing I personally am not a fan of, and I coach my vendors all the time, particularly when they're doing briefings with other analysts, is do not sell to analysts. Don't bring salespeople, and don't come in here and pitch us. We're not buying and we're not investing. We need to learn about your product. Yeah. We need to be we need to have a deep understanding, and we need to know where you fit in the marketplace so that we can have an educated conversation with buyers and others about what you're doing and where it fits. But what about any other sort of do's and don'ts that you would say?
Two huge ones. I think
yes.
A minor thing that people make a mistake all the time is trying to prove to one analyst that you're great by showing another analyst's data.
Yes.
Right? So, hey, this analyst rated us really well, or this analyst, said great things about us. Well, that doesn't play well if you're talking to another analyst. Don't ever do that.
Yep.
So that's a big one. I think a big mistake is sharing, I don't want to say sharing too much information, but not being focused and and careful in the way you communicate. So if you're doing a briefing for the first time with an analyst, you want to keep to fewer messages. Tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them, the old adage. Keep it to 3 to 5. What do you really want them to remember, right? They're hearing briefings all day long, and people are trying to put, 10 pounds of sausage in a 3-pound bag, right? They can't rush through slides and tell them everything you're going to tell them, right? You have to, give them information in a consumable way and leave them hungry for more, and go back. And so I'm always like trying to pare people down, get them to say less and say it more effectively and clearer and more and stronger, right?
Yeah.
I think, in fact, I'm a proponent that end every presentation with takeaways. What are the things, if the analyst remembers nothing else, get yourself to say 3 to 5 major points that you want them to remember about you. And that exercise, most vendors have no idea how to do that exercise. Like, I have 200 points. No, you have 3 points, 3 to 5 points to make about yourself. Get it down to those and put meat in it. Don't say we're the best at blah, 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 but give them some specifics that they can remember you by.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's you're right. And there are a lot of firms that come in and really try to, they want to impress you. They want everyone to think they're the best thing, since the last thing. But yeah, it's all about just being honest and open and transparent, I think too, right. and really just working together to understand, to educate, right? Just educate the analysts,
right.
help them understand you and help them help you is really what it all boils down to. So
strip your presentation and your talk over out of best, leading, first, unique, only,
Yes.
Nobody wants to hear that. They want to
the Marcoms. Keep the PR out of it.
Yeah. They want to see the proof. They want to know if you're going to say something like that, they're going to first argue with you. You're not the first. You're not the best. You're not the lead. Don't give them that, ammunition.
Yeah.
If you feel you really truly are, you want to give them the data.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yep, absolutely. So Julie, look, anything that you would add here to kind of round out what we've been talking about? I know we've been really hitting on the vendor side of this. Any buyer POVs that you'd kind of add to this in terms of just, the way buyers should or shouldn't be engaging these, or your viewpoint from that perspective?
Yeah, I would just say this is fascinating conversation, and I really hope that buyers also are listening to this conversation, because it really is a whole ecosystem. There's a lot of intricate activity that goes into the relationship between analysts and the providers that produces these snippets of data that buyers are looking for.
Yep.
And I don't know that all buyers really appreciate the fact that service providers engage with analysts as a serious investment, right? I mean, they should, if they're successful, right? Yep. They're, not only are they investing their time and their effort to bring research, to get to those, concise messages, to share new things and to have that relationship, but they're also oftentimes, investing dollars in, subscriptions to see what they're saying about everybody, or from the product marketing side of the house where, just even being able to reprint or reuse, one of the best known providers, snippet about you has a fee from one to the other. And I just don't think that's commonly understood in the buyer community. And so all of that said, the buyers, they just want to be aware of who's who, in the market. And I suspect that an HR buyer and a procurement buyer might have different needs, right? Or different point of views when they're trying to get to the end result of the analyst's work and knowledge. And so they might want to access some more reports, but I don't think often enough. I'd love to know from you guys' experience, how often do you have buyers engaging through, let's say, kind of the subscription models or whatever the different models are, to have those broader context conversations? Service providers, I think, do it all the time because that's part of doing this well. But, actually getting buyers to engage and with the analyst directly is, I think, just a harder notch.
You see the buyers. My experience is you see the buyers concentrated in 2 areas: the big 2, Forrester and Gartner, and then the boutique firms that offer that buy-side advisory and that not all do, right? And they can go to a specific firm that's an expert in HCM and do their questions without ask their questions and read the research without being, kind of overwhelmed by the very, very large firms. They can really zero in on what they're interested in. But
absolutely.
I see that the Fortune, 1000, the biggest vendors all use the analysts. I think they underuse them. Because one thing to invest in it, another thing to really take advantage, is kind of what I said before, take advantage of the research, take advantage of the inquiry time, and use it to help your business. And I don't think enough people do that.
Yeah, no,
I agree.
You're right. It is very mixed. And I have a lot of great buyer conversations, and I make a lot of content for buyers and work with vendors in my advisory. So I don't advise buyers to the extent of doing sourcing advisory. I'll definitely do work with them to help them understand the market and access things. But you're right. I think buyers need to look to the analysts as also a channel for helping them make decisions and helping them understand the marketplace and how to think about the solutions that they're looking to target. So all very good stuff. So Robin, just to kind of round things out, what are some key resources maybe that you would point to? I know you've got a ton, and I want to make sure before we wrap up that we hit on those. But otherwise, any other resources out there that you would say tell marketing leaders or vendor leaders or even buyers to maybe go and tap into that you feel like are really good for analyst engagement, analyst relations?
Yeah. Certainly the material that I'm involved with, the book, which the second edition is coming out. And we have a video interview series, myself and my partner in crime, Chris Holscher, do a interview series on YouTube about analyst relations. So I have to say that the reason I bring those up first is because we saw gaps in the resources available, to people, and we built these things to fill those in. There are a couple of books out there, Up and to the Right, and it's another book, Influence the Influencers. Those are books that people can get to. There is an two organizations I can mention, the IIAR, the International, Influencers and Analyst Relations or something. I think that's what it's for.
Yes. I'll put a link to that.
That's a group. And then there's a brand new group for analysts, analyst relations called Analyst Relations Association, which I can get you the URL to put in the show notes. And they're another source for getting information on how to do AR really well.
Yeah. Excellent. I'll make sure we give those links. If you could share them with me, I'll pop them in our description. And, look, Robin, this has been so great. I really appreciate you. I'm sure we could almost do another episode, possibly, and maybe we will at some point. But where can everyone find you, right? You mentioned your book, your website. Tell us where all we can find you, and I'll make sure these are all, if you could share them with me, I'll make sure they're in the description too.
My website, Schaffer, AR, SCHAFFER, AR.com, and we'll put that in the notes. And then my email, which I'm very happy to always entertain I love chewing on these things with people, is simply Robin@SchafferAR.com.
Got it. Perfect. And I believe you're on LinkedIn as well, right? Under Robin Schaffer. Yep.
Yeah.
And your book, where do we find your book?
Well, the current book is on Amazon. The new book, I would say wait till September, and it's going to be on there. We'll promote it on that website, and I'm very active in social in LinkedIn, so you'll find it in there. Feel free to connect with me anytime.
Absolutely. What's the title of that?
It's called Analysts on Analyst Relations.
Got it. Beautiful. We will make sure we get all the links. See if you'll share those with me. That's beautiful. Julie, where are you going to be? What's going on with you?
It's summertime, and summertime is the very heart of a lot of heavy client lifting around transformation. So a lot of folks are aiming for go lives at the end of the year, and maybe they're a little late starting or they're deep in the thick of it. And so until the fall, I'm spending most of my time with clients or with providers and clients that are engaging in some really exciting transformation activity.
Awesome. Very good. Well, I've got a long list. This weekend, I don't know if this episode, I think this episode will be going up next week, but I'll be at the Atlanta PayOrg chapter picnic. They're doing a school supply drive here in Atlanta. So we're going to get together and have some burgers and probably throw a football around and help some kids get some school supplies. So shout out to them for putting that together. Daily Pay and I are doing a panel on responsible earned wage access usage on July 24th at noon. So look for that. You can see that on my channels as well as Daily Pays. Payslip and I have a report that we're putting out. It's coming out next week. Actually, Julie, I've given you a sneak peek of that already. And that is something I did jointly between Payslip and the Global Payroll Management Institute. So look for that to come up soon. And then eventually we're going to do a webinar on that. And of course, we're hoping to have Fidelma McGurk from Payslip on the show in the coming weeks here to talk about that report. I've also got a blog coming out on Safeguards Chat SG, which we just talked about earlier today. And you can certainly find that over at gxcadvisors.com. And then, of course, I've got the Magellan AI Mixer coming up here in Atlanta as well. In Buckhead on July 26th at 6 p.m. We're going to be doing that at South City Kitchen. I'll be kicking off a conversation with multinational buyers and a few of the EOR or workforce solution providers here as well. So I'm really looking forward to that evening. So lots going on this summer, even though it's summer.
A lot going on.
Yeah,
you're busy.
I know. Well, look, Robin, thank you so very much. It's been amazing as always. And Julie, of course, I appreciate you as well. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, everyone.